them, but we do understand there will be an update from police in about 30 minutes. So we do hope, at bare minimum, we will have some more answers to those many questions that are lingering here, Alex.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Marissa Parr, for monitoring that for us and all this breaking news from Fordyce, Arkansas. Appreciate that. That's it for me today, everyone. But join me again right here on MSNBC from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow and Sunday. Deadline White House starts right now.
Hi there, everyone. Happy Friday. It's 4 o'clock in the East. A glimpse at how successful Donald Trump has been at moving the Overton window in terms of what is acceptable from a political candidate in one of America's two political parties when it comes to inciting threats of violence. An urgent plea today from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to keep in place the gag order against Trump. Prosecutors asking Judge Juan Merchan to extend much of the gag order imposed on the ex-president in that hush money election interference case. Bragg's team argues that Merchan no longer needs to enforce the ban on statements about trial witnesses, but they do ask that the gag order remain in place when it comes to jurors, prosecutors, court staff, and their families. They note that Trump's request to lift the gag order is filled with what we on this program might describe as nonsense from their perch on Earth 2. Quote, the people note that defendants' motion once again includes a number of categorically false accusations. For example, the defendant claims that the DA is acting in concert with the defendant's electoral opponent and an unspecified cast of associates in an effort to restrict the defendant's speech at an upcoming presidential debate. The defendant offers no factual basis for this assertion, and there is none. The claim is a lie. Their reason for why the gag order should stay in place to protect the jurors will sound familiar to anyone who has followed this case. For any of Trump's cases, or really any story that involves Donald Trump over the last 9 years, prosecutors say that although the, quote, defendant asserts through his counsel that he has no intention of making extrajudicial comments regarding the service of individual jurors, that promise does not amount to anything, given that the criminal defendant in question is Donald Trump. Quote, the defendant's singular history of inflammatory and threatening public statements includes attacks on jurors and other proceedings. Since the verdict in this case, the defendant has not exempted the jurors from his alarming rhetoric that he would have, quote, every right to seek retribution as president against the participants in this trial as a consequence of his conviction because, quote, sometimes revenge can be justified, he said. Prosecutors also asked that the gag order remain in place for court staff and prosecutors, citing an avalanche of dangerous, violent, often racist threats against the court and members of DA Alvin Bragg's team. 61 actionable threats in April, May, and June of this year alone, not to mention nearly 500 threatening emails and phone calls since April. An affidavit from an NYPD officer reveals this, quote, threat cases were also logged for a post showing sniper sights on people involved in this case or a family member of such a person, and a post disclosing the home address of a DA office employee. Another of the threats logged on April 15th, 2024 was a bomb threat to the residences of two people involved in this case. April 15th was the first day of the trial in People v. Trump. The ongoing battle to curb the ex-president's dangerous rhetoric as he tries desperately to discredit his conviction in New York is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin is here. She was at the courthouse for the hush money trial. She's covering the story for us today. Also joining us, former top official at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman is back, and the host of Politics Nation right here on MSNBC, the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton, is here. Lisa Rubin, I start with you. Your reporting is harrowing. I'll read some of it. MSNBC has obtained photos of a threatening and denigrating mailing sent to Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's campaign address. The photos, which were published by the New York Daily News yesterday, show a hand-addressed envelope postmarked April 24th from Portland, Oregon. They feature 3 crude enclosures. First features a cut of Bragg's face with the word moron sprawled across his forehead as pasted next to a noose, and a hand-drawn smiley face directly underneath. This is what Alvin Bragg wakes up to, goes to the office and is greeted by, goes to sleep to. And we searched high and low. We didn't find any reaction at all from anyone in the Republican Party. And that was sort of the point about how numb a lot of people have become to this very real threat of violence.
That's upsetting, Nicolle, that you didn't find any reaction like that, and at the same time, unsurprising. I also want to note that the communications that you just were quoting my description of were not among those that are addressed in today's filing from the DA's office. The ones that were discussed in the DA's filing were just those that made their way to the NYPD because they came in directly to the district attorney's office. The photos that I obtained for MSNBC were as sent to his campaign address. And so the universe of threats to Alvin Bragg and the people around him working with him are far larger in all likelihood than that which we can know. And of course, as bad as the images are that I saw today and had to describe for you and our colleagues, I want us all to pause and think about if those are the ones that they chose to share with us. Imagine what else is out there that we haven't seen. I did make a request to my source. Are there any emails, for example, that you can share with me that were sent to the campaign that might help give some more color and life to the threat environment in which the DA has been living? And the answer was, not that I can share with you. These are just so upsetting to everyone who has received them and everyone who has lived with them. And so as difficult and painful as it was to commit that description to writing for you and our colleagues, I am left thinking about what else has been sent to the DA, both through the campaign, through his official office, in the form of things like those bomb threats. What did they sound like? What did people say? Or the sniper images that are referred to in the filing. The amount of violence that has been targeted at the Manhattan District Attorney and his career staff as a result of their vowing to follow the facts and the law without fear or favor is just staggering.
I mean, Andrew Weissman, I wonder where they would get the idea to attack Alvin Bragg. Oh, wait, watch. Here's Jesse Waters, Greg Gutfield, Tucker Carlson. Look what they had to say about him.
Bragg is a felon, and he's trying to make a career for himself over this. And Bragg has interfered in this election more than Russia has or China has combined.
Basically, it's one party hunting another.
Alvin Bragg should be indicted.
I mean, that's just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. There is no limit to the things that Trump's allies will say. So the gag order is an important legal process, but the denigration and the targeting of Bragg is being done on Trump's behalf around the clock.
Yes, but I think there's a couple things to think about here. One is that the bomb threats and the other threats that the DA and Lisa are describing, those are crimes. And it is incumbent on the NYPD and the FBI, as they have done, to be very aggressive in prosecuting those. Those are criminal acts, and they're criminal acts against public servants. You cannot call in a fake bomb threat. You cannot threaten to kill somebody. It is so reminiscent of what we saw, the sniper sites is exactly what Roger Stone did with a federal judge that was overseeing his case. And then if you want to know how this relates to Donald Trump and why this is going to be, I think, so relevant to his sentencing is for anybody who, just to analogize this to what happened on January 6th, if you want to know Donald Trump's intent and whether he wants to see this happen, look at what he is not doing. You do not see him, like any current or former official would in a normal world, in Earth One, would be saying, absolutely do not engage in violence. That is not the way that you protest. That is what you would expect to have heard on January 6th. That is why you have the D.C. federal case that is currently being held up by the Supreme Court, is you have Donald Trump doing the exact same thing, which is if you want to know whether this is carrying out what he wants and his intentions, look at the fact that he is not lifting one finger or saying one word to say that this is wrong. Obviously, your point that all of his enablers are doing the same thing and creating this environment, but it's really important, I think, in the first instance to be thinking about Donald Trump, because he is going to be sentenced imminently by the judge who oversaw the trial and who is being given all of this evidence of ongoing, continuing threats. And one of the statistics that's laid out factually is that 90% of the threats that the NYPD has received are since the trial began. So this is all before Judge Merchan, and he is going to be able to consider what the defendant has done to foment this environment and what he has done to do anything to diminish the risk of harm to people who are public servants.
The protection of everyone involved in the trial is a massive, sprawling effort. Rev, I want to show you some people in their own words who've sort of walked in their shoes, talking about what it's like to be targeted and threatened by Trump.
They've been rewarded. I said in some interview or somewhere, I believe, that they're more like suicide bombers this time around, where they honestly, truly believe that they are being patriotic and that I am like the devil.
I'm very much concerned that individuals, lone wolves, will obviously resort to violence. And so here in the city of New York and in the state of New York, we're taking precautions. I have more law enforcement around me these days. Individuals have threatened my life, but I will not be paralyzed by fear.
As much as Michael is feeling relieved that the trial is over and gratified by the jury's verdict, he also is feeling fearful, and properly so, given the continued attacks, even under the gag order.
From the time I took office, I began to get threats. Those threats come in the way of emails. Those threats come in the way of phone calls, text messages, any which way you can imagine. At some point, the threats became where I had to leave my home.
Rev, we could have made a compilation that went on longer than we're on the air of everybody who's threatened Trump with accountability for his own actions, who's been threatened, from the media to Republicans who refused to go along with the coup, to Republicans who testified in the January 6 congressional hearings, to former colleagues in